Margaret Roberts, the daughter of a Grantham corner shop owner, would come to dominate the British political scene like few in history. But she arrived in a Westminster that was still an all-male club. To her contemporaries, the idea of a young mother embarking on a full-time political career was baffling.
There are the parliamentary recesses, which coincide with the school holidays, so I can see quite a good bit of the children.
She broke every Tory convention. A woman, a chemistry graduate, a grammar school girl.
I don't think that there will be a woman Prime Minister in my lifetime.
Although Tory MPs elected her leader in 1975, when she seized the dagger and challenged Edward Heath, she was acutely aware that many of her colleagues looked down their noses at her.
In the eyes of the wet Tory establishment, I was not only a woman, but that woman. Someone not just of a different sex, but of a different class. I offended on many counts.
In 1979, she achieved a landslide victory which laid the foundations for 18 years of Conservative government. She was not yet supreme in her own party. In her first cabinet, there were only a handful of true Thatcherites. She put them in the economic posts. She was seriously outnumbered by the wets, who would undermine her and who underestimated her.
To start with, there was an uneasy mix for her, but I think that was good for the collective decisions of the cabinet, and she didn't always get her own way, and that probably was a good thing as well.
But Margaret Thatcher did rewrite Conservative economic policy. She blasted the old Conservative establishment off the field. She thought they'd pursued a consensus with Labour's disastrous economic policies, and to her, consensus was a dirty word.
You turn if you want to. The ladies not for turning.
If you talk to anybody, really, the only thing they were asking was, is the U-turn going to be in 6 months, or will they last as long as 12 months before they have a U-turn? And they could not believe that we actually meant what we said, that we were actually going to go through with it. And it was really Margaret's determination which was absolutely critical in it.
Margaret Thatcher was engaged on an economic mission. The central creed was monetarism, but the other articles of faith were tax cuts, squeezing the trade unions, later the sale of council houses, and eventually her proudest boast, privatisation.
Soon everyone will have a chance to share in the shares of British gas.
She and the group of us in that government at that time gave the world privatisation, and in a dozen years it swept the world.
But at home, for millions of jobs in manufacturing and industry, the Thatcherite economic programme was fatal, and employers joined trade unions pleading for reflation of the economy. Margaret Thatcher said the riots in Brixton and Toxteth were nothing to do with her monetarist experiment, but her critics believed she was polarising Britain.
I think we became a more divided society as a result of Margaret Thatcher's time in office.
I must say, I can't stand those who carp and criticise.
Beyond economics, voters were getting to know their Prime Minister better through events and her reactions to them.
We have to move these to open the road.
She personally authorised the SAS raid to free hostages from the Iranian embassy in London. And she refused to concede political status to IRA hunger strikers at the Maze prison.
Crime is crime is crime. It is not political, it is crime.
She could sit back, and I know no other political leader who would do the same, go through all the hunger strikers and let them go and kill themselves one after the other and be irresolute and unbound.
When the IRA leader in the Maze, Bobby Sands, died, the IRA made Margaret Thatcher their top target for assassination. And in 1984, at the Conservatives' Brighton conference, the IRA came close to killing Margaret Thatcher and her cabinet.
The conference will go on as usual. All attempts to destroy democracy by terrorism will fail.
Margaret Thatcher believed another violent episode 2 years earlier was the turning point in her popularity. Dispatching a task force to retake the Falkland Islands from Argentina was every inch a Thatcher initiative. Her own Foreign Secretary, along with much of the international community, tried to dissuade her right up to the last minute. Victory came at a cost: more than 250 British lives, nearly 700 Argentine. For Margaret Thatcher, the Battle of the Falklands rekindled Britain's past glories.
Very important that these wonderful Falkland Islands people should know that we are here to defend them. Britain is not prepared to be pushed around. We have ceased to be a nation in retreat.
She was there with this very, very sharp image, and a sharp image of aggression, certainty, determination, ruthlessness, and sometimes brutality. She was the warrior queen, not only about the Falklands, she was a warrior queen in whatever she did. If she was dealing with the trade unions, she was a warrior queen. They were the enemy to be routed, no quarter.
All those in favour of that resolution, would you please show?
Margaret Thatcher cast the trade unions as the enemy within. She restricted picketing, introduced compulsory postal ballots, but the climactic moment in her war with the unions came when the National Union of Mine Workers chief Arthur Scargill called his members out on strike in 1984. Margaret Thatcher used every force available, and some which constitutionally weren't strictly available, to make sure she defeated a union leader she saw as dangerously extremist. At the same time, the international face of the hard left was softening. Margaret Thatcher spotted Mikhail Gorbachev's willingness to reform before many others, and she stuck by him when his position was shaky. With her political soulmate Ronald Reagan in the White House for much of the 80s, she would claim co-authorship of the death of communism. At home, there was a new uprising. Margaret Thatcher was warned that the poll tax, a one-rate-for-all council tax, would be unpopular. But she steamed on.
It was a one-off thing to which she became absolutely adamantly committed and would not hear any word against it. And she wouldn't have been like that during the early phase. The early Margaret Thatcher would not have made that mistake.
Many were now muttering that Margaret Thatcher seemed to be losing touch with the real world. The economy was faltering, and she was becoming a little imperial.
We have become a grandmother.
It was European integration which would seal her fate. Her approach could be summed up in one word.
No, no, no.
Margaret Thatcher moved from being a practical European to a Europhobe. She argued it was Europe that had changed, not her. That President Mitterrand and Chancellor Kohl were old men in a hurry.
We haven't worked all these years to free Britain from the paralysis of socialism, only to see it creep in through the back door of central control and bureaucracy from Brussels.
Her aggressive tone on Europe alienated abroad and at home, and old allies felt a bunker mentality was developing.
She wasn't prepared to brook argument. And so to the latter part of Geoffrey Howe's and Nigel Lawson's time as ministers, she was barely on speaking terms with them.
Eventually, the last survivor from her first cabinet, Sir Geoffrey Howe, quit.
She found my style of argument increasingly irritating, and to be honest, I dare say I did hers as well.
The time has come for others to consider their own response to the tragic conflict of loyalties with which I have myself wrestled for perhaps too long.
She described that resignation statement as an act of bile and treachery designed to stir her hungriest enemy, Michael Heseltine. He'd been 5 years in the backbench wilderness denying murderous intent, but now he was ready to strike. Mrs. Thatcher felt it beneath her dignity to fight hard for her own job. She went off to a European summit in Paris. In her absence, an amateurish campaign was mounted.
I'm naturally very pleased that I got more than half the parliamentary party and disappointed that it's not quite enough to win on the first ballot.
She thought she could plough on, but she was mortally wounded.
Mrs. Thatcher, when are you going to resign?
One by one, her cabinet members told her the game was up. She resigned and was cheered by her treacherous party before one last hurrah in the Commons.
I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying this. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
And then she was off. She left the Conservative Party deeply traumatised by its act of political matricide, but she also left a rare body of political achievement behind her. Her comeback appearances had a habit of reviving Conservative divisions. And even in retirement, she was never far from controversy.
The mummy returns.
In 2003, she lost her husband, Dennis. They'd been married for 52 years. In her later years, she rarely spoke in public. One of the last occasions, the unveiling of a statue outside the House of Commons chamber.
I might have preferred iron, but bronze will do.
The Conservative outsider few thought would reach the top altered the course of British politics and became one of the most effective prime ministers of all time.